Maybe I should take, now you can hear me. Okay. Well, I just want to begin. I know Edie's going to interview me, but I just want to say something before, whoa, this is big. Whoa. Who did this chair? Oh my God. Okay. Anyway, woo. Need a seat or something. I just want to begin by thanking all of you for coming out on this rainy day. I know everybody in this room has like a mile-long to-do list, so I want to thank you for taking a moment to come here and listen to this interview, be a part of this great program. Bettina, I want to thank you for hosting us for this beautiful stadium. I've never been on a Jumbotron in my life. Wow, I feel like I finally arrived. It's like, wow, I just wish my kids were here, because if I tell them, they'll tell me I made it up. And, but I'm going to take a picture, so I know it's real. But I so want to thank Bettina for hosting us. Donna, wherever Donna went, they're great friends, but Donna has been an incredible friend to me since the day I set foot in this city. Not knowing what was ahead of me, not knowing how to be a first lady, didn't know anything really about Sacramento, and my life was really in an upheaval, and Donna stepped in and took extraordinary care of me, and she's still one of my closest friends along with her husband, Greg. And I just also wanted to ask all the people who worked in the First Lady's office and who worked with me on all my insane projects to just stand, because they're still standing. So wherever they are, there's so many of them are here. And I want to, they've all gone on and gotten children and married, and I'm so proud of them all, and they're still doing incredible work of purpose. And that makes me so proud. They're all still out there trying to change the world. So, and they're all stay in touch with me, and I really love them. And the time I spent here was extraordinary. And in large part, it's because of the people I got to work with, the stuff we got to do, and that those relationships have continued, which means so much to me. So now I'm going to sit down in this, like, it feels like Alice in Wonderland chair. So I'm going to do that, but anyway, I just wanted to thank you. Lord. This chair is crazy. Oh, my God. Oh, my God, help me. Jesus. Okay. All right.
We could sit forward. We could just sit here.
We're on there, down there?
I don't know if people can see us, though, from there.
Okay. I feel like I'm now going to redo the stage.
Oh, watch your mic.
Okay, just start talking, Edie, because I put my back to everybody over there. So go ahead.
I love it, because she comes to Sacramento and she starts changing things. And is this not exactly what we know her to do?
Yeah. Okay.
This is the Maria Shriver we adore.
Okay, now I don't have my back. I have a pet peeve about that.
And let's just start out with we've missed you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
We have missed you.
Thank you.
You created so much goodwill as our First Lady.
Thank you.
And you really are missed. Your women's conference, people still talk about all the time how much they miss. And so I really wanted to start, because we are here in Sacramento and there are so many people who feel so connected with you, that it really struck me that much of what's in this book is an extension of what you did as California's First Lady.
Well, this book, came out of my Sunday paper newsletter, which I've been writing since I was First Lady, and it's because I happen to think a lot, and so I put these columns out, and a lot of the people who get the Sunday paper said, could you put them together into a book so that we have something with all of them together? So I was like, oh, okay, that sounds like a good idea, and I've been really so shocked at its success. I was like shocked, and I'm a big thinker, and I write all the time, and I write to get my thoughts out of my head so they don't drive me crazy, and I put them down. And I've been so moved and touched as I've traveled around the country to find so many people of so many different ages who are going through the same thing, which is called life. Yeah. And, which is what it is, right? And so it's everybody I can talk to, whether they're 20, 30, 40, 50, 60, 70, they're all thinking about how they can do more, what is a meaningful life. They're rethinking power, they're rethinking success, they're letting children go, they're losing parents, they're reevaluating their own life path. And I think that that's what, you know, brings us together. That's what builds community, when we're able to talk about the things that bring us together as opposed to the things that divide us. And I've been so moved by the stories that people have told me after they got the book, and the, you know, kind of, that's me too, another version of me too. But, you know, and I'm going through that, and I'm also seeking to live a meaningful life. So I think while we're kind of, so much of the news is focused on what divides us and what separates us and bad, there's so much that I'm seeing all across this country that unites us, that we share, that's common, and that doesn't matter your age, doesn't matter where you live, doesn't matter the color of your skin, that it's just what connects us, and that you can build so much from that place. It's so exciting to me, actually.
And a lot of people just telling you, I'm going through transitions, and there's a similarity when you're feeling that upheaval. Is it different for you putting these out as columns once a week online, and then having them in print in a book all together in one place?
Well, it's, you know, I'm kind of old-fashioned. I like a book, right? And the great thing, it's, you can, you know, the thing about the internet is great, but you put it out there and it kind of just disappears into thin air. But what's been great about this tour, because it really has been a tour, is that I've met so many people. And I'm in Long Island, there's 1,000 people. I'm out in, you know, Connecticut, I'm in Dallas, I'm in Miami, I'm in Austin, I'm in Phoenix, you know. And it's people, you know, like I was in Phoenix on Saturday, people in their 20s, people in their 30s. And it's really, you know, to me, people are coming for my work in Alzheimer's. They're coming because they're women, and they have a daughter, they have a wife, they have a sister, someone has cancer, someone's, you know, got as I said, a mother with Alzheimer's, and they're holding the book. And they're saying, you know, this is helping me. This is, you know, making me feel like I'm not alone. And really, I met one woman here, Linda, I don't know where she is, but there you are. So we had an incredible launch team for this book. We went back to kind of retail politics. 500 women signed up in 48 hours to take control of this book. And they made it #1 on the New York Times like that, along with a lot of other people. But they went out and just like sold the you-know-what out of this book by word of mouth, and by, you know, championing the different chapters and talking about their experiences. So it took on a life of its own, which is so great.
We think about launch teams as a group of public relations professionals who we hire. In this case, these are just people who say, I love this. I want to shout it from the mountaintops.
Yeah, and they developed their own groups, and they were all over the country, all different ages, all different skin colors, and it was just incredible that they signed up and said, you know, I want to talk about this. And they, you know, had their own group, and I've talked to people who are like, this changed my life. I quit my job. I did this. I did that. And it's like, whoa. There's a line, I think I don't know if it's from Rumi, that, you know, when you're ready, the teacher appears. And so I think we all pick up books at different times in our lives, and they speak to us in different ways. I remember, and I picked up one of my favorite books, The Gift from the Sea, which is an Anne Morrow Lindbergh book from a long time ago, and it spoke to me about becoming a woman and what you needed to do to kind of step into your own femininity, your own womanhood. And it spoke to me at a time in my life that perhaps if I'd read it 10 years earlier, it wouldn't have. And so I think there's enough in this book, I hope, that speaks to you wherever you are. If you're a new mother, if you're a grandmother, if you've lost someone, if you're struggling with something, if you're redefining things, if you're thinking about issues anew for the first time, whether it's, as I said, leadership, letting go, power, forgiveness, fear, loss, all of these things that I think sometimes we are afraid to talk about, and we need like a jump starter to talk about. I'm hopeful that this will ignite conversations that will heal, that will inspire, that will get you to think about what's important to you, what you think that's new and that's original, because I really do believe that we all have a purpose, we all have original thoughts, we all have our own thinking, and that our thinking is valuable. And, you know, that's my hope for the book.
One of the things that struck me as I was reading it, and I was taking notes as I was going through the book, was the things I was writing down at this particular point in my life probably would be very different if I were reading the book in 5 years. And I thought, this is a book I'm going to come back to and come back to over time, because I know it will change for me. And what resonated today may be different in a few years. Let's talk about some of the
Well, it definitely
themes.
changed for me. You know, I'm definitely not the same person I was in my 20s or my 30s or my 40s or my 50s, really. And I think that's a good thing, actually, because I think that, you know, life should impact us. Life should affect us. Life should land on us and get us to reevaluate or rethink. And that was always one of my big beefs. I have several with politics. But the big one was that we don't let our political leaders evolve. Right. We keep them stuck to a position that they espoused when they might have been 30 or when they might have been 35. And we say, like, you said this, and we hold them up as hypocrites, or we say, you changed your mind. And I'm like, thank God you changed your mind, because I don't want to talk to someone who hasn't changed their mind, or who hasn't, you know, had something impact them, or who hasn't been changed by loss or struggle, or who hasn't stepped back and go, you know, I was wrong about that. And I say in this book a lot of what I was wrong about, and what I feel, you know, pain made me change, age made me change, losing my parents made me change, my kids leaving, ending my marriage, all these things landed like a ton of bricks. And so it would be weird if I was like, ooh, la-da-da, nothing happened, nothing affected me at all, and I think exactly the same way as I'm 21. So I think that's a good thing to change.
One of the things that has changed for you that you wrote about that I loved was you were raised in some senses to, you know, this strong public family, to see sometimes kindness as a weakness. Yeah. And you're now viewing it as not only a strength, but something with muscle behind it that has to be exercised.
Exactly. And I think I was raised in a very tough, competitive political family. I went into a very tough, competitive profession. And when I went into the news business, there were no women, so it was tough. And so I wasn't really, it wasn't like, come on in here and be nice or be kind and you're going to do well. So that wasn't, I wasn't raised with that. I was raised by a mother who said, get out there and compete and be tough. Be a competitor, get up, get tackled, get back up. And so I wasn't on the lookout for kind. And it wasn't something that I was experiencing in my own home. That's not to say my parents weren't kind, but they were motivators. They were tough. And so when I found in my life people treating me with kindness, it came almost like a, what is that? And then I was like, wow, that feels really good. And that's really powerful. And to begin to see kindness and care as muscular values that I think should be part of the national conversation, should be part of the political conversation, because I think people grow from that. They don't grow from being shamed. They don't grow from being guilted. Nothing good comes out of that. And so much good comes out of recognizing somebody, seeing them, valuing them, being kind to them. And I learned that later in life.
Part of the title of your book is Reflections, Prayers, and Meditations for a Meaningful Life.
Right.
How do you define a meaningful life? What is that for you?
Well, as I say in the beginning of the book, I think it's different for everybody. And I think for me, it's been to live a life of purpose. I was certainly raised with a lot of expectation, and I write in there about that, and then kind of trying to understand that I actually deserve something too. But I think having a life of purpose, for me, it's having a life of faith. For me, it's having a life of family and broadening that definition for what family is to me and for me, and friends. And for me, that's really kind of to have work that I think is meaningful, to have a vision or to have a goal that something's larger than even my work, which for me is trying to find a cure or beat back Alzheimer's. And that's tough as the woman who said at the airport today when I was getting my coffee, she said, I just want to thank you for your work on Alzheimer's. That's one tall bitch of a mountain to climb. She goes, if anybody's going to get up there, it's you. I said, yeah, it is a bitch of a mountain to climb. But it gets me up in the morning. I'm blessed to still be able to do my journalism. on my own terms. One young journalist who's at NBC who has her own show, she said to me like about a month ago, she goes, I noticed that you come in, you do some pieces on the Today Show, and then you get to go. How'd you get that gig? I said, that's 40 years in the trenches. I go, that's how I got that gig. She's like, touche, got it. I was like, yeah, that's how that gig came about. But so, you know, my work is meaningful. My volunteer work or my passion work is meaningful. My children, my friends, my family, and my faith, which I rely on. So that, for me, is a meaningful life.
So a lot of us have watched you from a distance juggling all of this. You know, 4 children who, you know, just are lovely human beings and now launched in the world. You know, your work with Alzheimer's, your work with gender equality and all the women who you've helped, you know, raise up and shine a light on. But a big theme in this book is finding quiet.
Right.
Finding the time to go inward. So where do you find that time? And let's talk about why that's such a big focus in this book.
Well, for me, I found also that late in life. I grew up in a really noisy, busy, chaotic, fun, inspiring house. And, but I found my quiet. I had to go down to nature or go into the stables and deal with a horse because it was noisy in my house. And then I just recreated noisy in my own life. I created a lot of, you know, work and family and busy and all that sort of stuff. And I found that it was too much for me. I couldn't kind of like, I didn't like how I felt. I didn't like how much was going on in my head. And a friend of mine gave me the gift of meditation. And when I tried to sit, I just couldn't do it. I said, I can't do this. I don't have time for this. I'm not that person. My brother tried to take me to a yoga class. And during the time in the yoga class when everybody was quiet, I started doing crunches. I'm like, I don't get it. You know, it's like, this isn't for me. It isn't for me. And I got a really kind, compassionate teacher who said, you know, you can't sit still. I said, no, I can't. And I'm afraid to sit still. And I'm afraid of what will come up if I sit still. And he said, well, let's just try to sit still for 30 seconds. And so we did 30 seconds. And then he came back. He said, well, maybe tomorrow we'll do a minute. And I worked my way up to 20 minutes in the morning and 20 minutes in the evening. And I get up early to do it. It helps that I now know that it's good for your brain and for your mind. So that makes me think I have a purpose, because I'm kind of focused like that. But it is a gift to me. I'm a better person due to my quiet time. It allowed me to really be clear that I'm way stronger than I ever thought I was. That everything I was afraid of, I can manage and I can endure, and I have. It made me realize that my voice, my intuitive voice, is strong and right. It made me realize I can be compassionate and strong simultaneously, that I can be tough and tender simultaneously, that every part of myself that I was afraid of is okay, and that I can move forward in my present way, balancing the paradoxes that we all have, by the way. We're all dark and light. We're all tough and tender. We're all simple and complex. And I think embracing all of that, particularly for women, is a very good place to be. I think it makes you a better leader. I think it makes you a better mother, a better professional, a better woman. And it makes you aware of your pluses and minuses and gives you things to work with. And it also makes you get in touch with your true self. And I really do believe that there exists, as Thomas Merton and other people have written, there's a true self and there's a false self. And there is each of us, the examined life is something that we each have that's in front of us. And to connect our false self, which is what we put out into the world, and connect it to who we really are, is our life's work.
One of the things that I thought was interesting was this balance of prayer and meditation, and you talking about prayer is talking to God and meditation hearing from God,
yes.
Or however God is defined.
Yes, however God is defined.
And for these columns that are all in the book, you've added a prayer.
Right.
At the end of every single one of them. Why did you do that?
Because I pray a lot. And I do it every morning and I do it every evening. Like this morning, I opened my eyes and I I say a prayer of gratitude while I'm still in the bed. You know, I said, I open my eyes and I thank God that I can open my eyes. And then I thank God that I can put my feet on the floor, because a lot of people can't. And then I thank God right away for my children. And then I really said, you know, today, please put me in the place that I'm supposed to be. Help me go on the path that I'm supposed to go. Direct me how you feel I should be living my life. I need help. I need support. Help guide me. And I do need help, and I do need support. And whatever your God, you know, my mother prayed to Mary all the time. Other people speak to Jesus. Some people speak to Buddha. I wear Buddha, Kuan Yin, Mary. I wear it all because I believe it's all really about love. And for me, I've also changed my kind of perspective on Catholicism. I was raised with a judgmental God in mind, and if I didn't go to church, I was going straight to hell, and for various other things, I was going to hell too. And I realized that, whoa, I didn't go to church and I didn't go to hell, and ooh, you know, I did something else and I didn't go to hell, so like, what's all that about? And then I really felt that, you know, that God is love for me, and that's what I'm supposed to be doing here. And so I asked for support and help to keep me on that path on a daily basis.
So we're having this conversation on a particularly divisive day in the state of California with President Trump in San Diego today and now Los Angeles. Not to mention news of, you know, kind of further revolving door at the White House. Let's talk about leadership.
Right.
And specifically right now, you've got an audience of mostly women. Let's talk about women leaders.
Well, that's what I like about this, about She Shares, which is about lifting women leaders up. And I do believe that we're at a unique time through for various reasons where women are stepping up to be leaders, right? And who are seeing themselves as leaders that might not have seen themselves as leaders a year ago. I was in Texas on primary day on this book tour, and it was a record number of women running in Texas that had never dreamed of running for office a year ago. And to me, that was, whether they're running as Republicans or Democrats, it didn't matter to me, because the fact that they were saying, you know, I'm going to step up, I'm going to try, is a very powerful thing. And I think women can step up in a whole host of ways. I don't think just running for elected office is the only way to step up. But I think the challenge, for me anyway, in front of women, is if we don't like the way men led, how are we going to lead differently? And what values are we going to put on the table that we don't think men put on the table? And are we going to exclude men from the table if we felt that we were excluded? And so what I try to say to my children and what I say to myself is, if I envision the table, I want men at that table. I say to my daughters, make sure that you hold a seat for other women, but make sure you include your brothers and other men who value the same things you value at that table, while I also say the same things to my sons. Make sure that there are women at this table. Make sure there are women from different walks of life, different colors, different experiences. And also, as I say to my daughters, I think the values that you put at the table, like putting muscle in compassion, putting muscle in caring. We have 60 million Americans caregiving almost full-time for no pay in this country, 15 million in the Alzheimer's space alone. Those are 2/3 of them are women, and those are women who are balancing children, aging parents, and professions, right? And so is that a value that we want to put into the political process? I think so. I think, you know, those are different things that have been put at the table before. So I think women have a great opportunity to do it differently, to be inclusive, like we think maybe we weren't included, and to broaden the seats at the table in a way perhaps that men were too afraid to do, didn't think about it, or whatever the issue was. But I think that women will change the way we lead, and they will change the nature, and I hope also the conversation and the way we talk to one another. That is really, for whatever we want to say about this current administration, and I'm not here to discuss that particularly, but I do want to say that I think words do matter. I think tone does matter. And I think as I said before, shaming people in public, taking people down in public has no place in our civic discourse. I really believe that. And I think, I often find people say, you should get in and you should say, this, that, and the other. And I'm like, that's not the way I talk. I don't talk like that. And I think that it's, and I write in the book about pausing and about being reflective. That doesn't mean you're weak. It doesn't mean you don't have a position. It doesn't mean you don't have something to say. But I think we all benefit from taking a beat and trying to stay high.
Why don't you explain super quickly the power of pause?
Well, there's a chapter in here called The Power of the Pause, and it came from a college commencement address that I gave to the School of Journalism Communications at USC. My daughter was graduating, and I spoke about the power really of journalism, the power of words, and really that in this 24-hour news cycle, the importance of pausing before we report something that we don't know to be true, that we haven't checked 3 or 4 times, before we send a text to somebody else that we don't know to be true or whose only goal is to be divisive and mean. And I went through a series of things about what those of us who are in journalism can do, but really it applies to all of us, what we can all do and the benefits that come to all of us by taking a beat. I write so many things down that I'm going to send, and I never send. I put them in the save section, and when I go back to them 24 hours later, I realize that has no business going out. And I try to say that to my kids at all. Most of the fights they get into are on text. They're like, I said, pick up the phone, go to lunch, go to get a coffee, look at the other person. And so that's one of the things that I try to emphasize. But I think we have lost the ability to be reflective in this current cycle. And I often quote Governor Brown and Secretary of State Schultz, 2 people that I really admire for their public service. Both talked to me about being at the height of their careers and making time. George Schultz said to me as Secretary of State, when he would come back from 2:30 to 3:30, quiet time. Didn't take any calls unless it was from the president and his wife. No one else was allowed to get through because he needed time to think. He needed time to reflect on what was going on, because when you speak in those positions, it can change the world. And he wanted to be in touch with what he really thought. He wanted to be reflective, and he wanted to pause.
You mentioned your kids. We should talk about 2 of them have their own projects that they're launching this week as you are on your book tour.
Yes, I know.
Let's start with your daughter.
So my daughter, Christina, and I did a film that's coming out on Friday on Netflix, and it's called Take Your Pills. And it's a documentary really about the ADD, ADHD epidemic and the overprescription of Adderall, Ritalin, and a whole host of other drugs as we seek to excel in school and really to kind of live and work in this 24-hour news cycle. And the CDC just came out that in women in their 20s, 700% increase in prescription of Adderall for young women. The epidemic on college campuses, the prescription of Adderall, Ritalin at the age of 6 and 7, which are highly addictive Schedule II drugs. And I'm really proud of Christina because she took her own personal experience and her own struggles with learning issues and with wanting to keep up and trying to live and perform in a rote education system, and then saw the incredible abuse of it in college and came to me and said, we really need to do a documentary about this because there are no long-term studies. Psychiatrists are writing out these prescriptions without any testing, putting them out. Educators are pressuring parents. The whole system is out of control. And now we have Silicon Valley also, all these people trying to hack their brains and hack about how to keep up 24 hours a day at a computer performing. And I really think that the film is powerful because it really does, at the end of the day, say at what cost is all of this success? At what cost are we educating our kids and expecting them at 7 and 8 to do 3 hours of homework or 9 hours of homework and teaching them only this way when there are all these other things now that are available, whether it's meditation, social emotional learning, more exercise, rest, more creative schooling environments. So I'm really hopeful that anybody here who's got a kid who has struggled, and there are a lot of kids who have severe and real learning issues for whom that is a benefit and does help them. But there's an incredible abuse. And when we first went to pitch it to Netflix, the people were like, I don't know, let me go home and talk to my kids. And they came back and like, we're in. Because my kids told me they're all doing it and I didn't even know anything about it. So there's an incredible abuse of that. And I think it'll be a really powerful, if you have kids in school, I hope your schools will watch it, encourage people to watch it. And then Patrick is, next week has a film called Midnight Sun, which is kind of this incredible love story. So girls are going to go crazy over him. They're already running around. I feel like this, they're like, Patrick, Patrick. I'm like, what? How'd that happen? And Catherine, who's who's the older child, wrote a book this past year that was a great success called Maverick and Me, which is all about her passion about fostering animals, adopting animals, adopt, don't shop, and that was really great. And Christopher, who is the baby, is at Michigan having the time of his life. I want to come back as him. But, and I just want to do a shout out to Lindsay. Lindsay Schneid, I don't know if she's still here. There she is over there. Lindsay worked with our family for 14 years, and she's from Lodi, and she's a teacher in Lodi. And I would not have been able to do the work that I did as First Lady, nor would Arnold have been able to be the governor and do the work he did without Lindsay. And so I just wanted, and I think that that's a really important thing because it takes a village. All of us need help and support in raising our families, taking care of our parents. And Lindsay was an extraordinary right arm to me. As I, came up here to try to do my work and I was also caring for 2 aging parents at the same time as having 4 little children and having a husband that was traveling around and trying to do the work of the state, which is 24/7. And as I said, I had a dad with Alzheimer's and a mother who was having strokes and 4 little kids, and it was a lot. And Lindsay was right there, so that's important. So thank you, Lindsay.
And I should also mention that you write a lot about gratitude. So it's beautiful to watch you practice that at midstream. I also wanted to talk to you about, the book is about action. So I only have a few minutes left of this part of the conversation, but some actually actionable things that we can take home. And one of them starts next month. And that is through the Women's Alzheimer's Movement. You have, I wanted to get the words exactly, the Move for Minds. It's your 4th year, every June. The closest one this year is in San Francisco. Show of hands, who's going? Because I know a big group.
Probably most people don't know about it. There, all the
big
people
group
in the First
from
Lady's
Sacramento is going.
I can explain. Move for Minds is an initiative of the Women's Alzheimer's Movement, which I created, the Women's Alzheimer's Movement. When my dad got Alzheimer's in 2003, he was diagnosed a month before Arnold decided to run for governor. And so my journey with him showed me that, even the smartest, most creative brain on the planet can get wiped out by Alzheimer's. And if you don't have money, you will get wiped out by it as well. And if you're a caregiver, you'll get wiped out about it as well. And so when I was First Lady, I started programming at the Women's Conference some tracks on caregiving and saw that they were packed with other women about my age, caring for aging parents. And more women started coming up to saying, my mother's been diagnosed. My mother has Alzheimer's. My mother has cognitive impairment. And I went to the Alzheimer's Association, to several university doctors and stuff, and said, I think this is impacting women at a more rapid rate. And everybody told me, no, you're wrong. It's just because women live longer. I said, no, I don't think so, because these women are telling me that it's women in their 60s, women in their 70s. It's not because women live longer. And they said, yes, it is. So I said, well, I'm going to prove you wrong here. And so I went and did, with Karen Skelton and a lot of other people here, the Shriver report, which was a report to the nation about the state of Alzheimer's. And lo and behold, we found that women were discriminated against by this disease. Every 66 seconds now in this country, a new brain develops Alzheimer's, and 2/3 of those brains belong to women. 2/3 of those brains belong to women. This is really important. And Alzheimer's is 20 years in your brain before you're symptomatic. And everywhere I went, there was no research being done on women's brains. There was no research being done on hormones, on inflammation, on X chromosome, and all this sort of stuff. And then people were asking me to come and speak. So I said, you know what, I'm going to create a movement to educate women, to empower them, to get them the latest research, to get them the latest information. And I'm going to make people study women's brains. And so we are now doing that. We're funding about 7 different trials. And the Move for Minds initiative came because I said, where are women who care about their bodies? They're in Equinox, they're in gyms. So I went to Equinox and I said, you know, I want to partner with you. And every corporate partner I went to and said, I want to partner with you, they're like, no, we don't like Alzheimer's. It's scary. It's about old people. Uh-oh, no. And so I was like, no, it's not. I'm talking about people in their prime of their lives. I'm trying to get them information. So we started in 1 club. We moved to 4. We moved to 6. We moved to 8. This year we're moving to 93 clubs globally. And Move for Minds is an initiative which brings women and shows them what are the right exercises that you need to do for your brain health.
Maria, they put it up for you.
Oh, okay, there you go. So it's train your brain, train your body, make them last a lifetime. And people raise money to come there. Equinox is now going to give us a portion of all their membership fees and other things that they sell. But most importantly, I'm bringing researchers to different clubs to give you the most up-to-date information about what you can do today that benefits your mind, your brain, right? Which begins to change at the age of 25. So while we think about our thighs and our triceps and all of this sort of stuff, our brain also doesn't literally have cellulite, but it is getting slower. It does change. And so just educating people, women and men, educating women in their 30s who have parents who are my age and older about getting cognitive testing, about understanding, you know, that the brain does slow down and what you can do to keep it healthy. Meditation is an important component, as I said. Managing stress, what you eat, how you exercise, how blood goes to your brain. So Move for Minds, we have a big team from Sacramento who went last year to San Francisco. They are people who raise money, get friends to support them, who go in there and get the latest information. So you're all invited. You're all invited to go onto the Women's Alzheimer's Movement and learn about what Alzheimer's is and isn't, is and is not, because there's a lot of misinformation about who gets it, how can you get it. If you have the gene, does that mean you'll get it? No, it doesn't. If you don't have the gene, does that mean you won't get it? No, it doesn't. So all of you, every single person in this room, should be concerned about their brain health and should be doing whatever you're doing for your body, for your brain as well. And if you have a loved one, I hope you will just turn to one other woman or one other man and tell them about the importance of their brain health, that there are things. I can't sit here and tell you if you do these 5 things, you won't get Alzheimer's. But even delaying it by a year or 2 for a family will save them a fortune. It is the most expensive disease in the history of the United States, and right now it's on track to bankrupt Medicaid as we know it in the healthcare system. It's incredibly expensive, not to mention just mind-blowing in so many other ways. So that's what gets me up every day, in addition to other stuff. But it gets me up because I'm determined to find a cure or find something that will slow it down. I just went, because I worked at NBC and interviewed Bill Gates, who's just now stepped into the space and is putting several $100 million into it, into getting doctors to collaborate, data collection, clinical trials. So this is what I call the ultimate women's empowerment issue in a way, because it affects women professionally, spiritually, financially, physically, emotionally. You spend your whole life trying to get to the pinnacle of your career, and Alzheimer's knocks you out like that. It's stealing the brains of the best and the brightest, and I believe we can stop it in our lifetime, and I believe it should be something that we care about, and that we should vote for people who want to fund at the NIH level research into whether it's Alzheimer's, cancer, or AIDS, that makes this a big issue along with caring, because everybody's going to end up a caregiver. We're an aging nation, and so that's what I'm thinking about. That's one of the things I'm thinking about.
You talk a lot about the struggles with that in your own family,
right.
And also so many other things your kids have struggled with, things that you have struggled. Your family has gone through many public tragedies.
Right.
You are a public person, but you've also been very private in a lot of ways. Mm-hmm. What has it been like for you putting some of these things out in the world with this book?
Well, I think people are really kind. People are really loving. And I put out my story. I think when you grow up in a public family, you're always kind of wondering what's your story and what's their story. I was also raised with a great deal of respect for privacy and loyalty in that space. And so I put out, this is what I've been thinking, but it was really important to me not to throw shade or do anything derogatory about any other person. And I didn't, and I'm really proud of that. And that's the way kind of I want to go. And I think there's a great Maya Angelou quote that says, you know, tell what you know, but not all that you know. And I don't think, you know, I think a lot of stuff is no one's business. And I think if you have a story that can help people, that's great. But if you want to tell a story that hurts people, I don't think there's really any great thing on that. And so I felt like, you know, people had come up to me really my whole life about different stuff that I've thought about. And I thought, you know, I've been through a lot of stuff, and I think if I have a piece of advice or a piece of wisdom or a piece of reflection that can help somebody else, put it there. And I have so many women before this book who came up to me and go, you know, my story is yours. And I asked them their story, and it had nothing to do with me. It wasn't even remotely like my story. But for some reason, they felt their story was mine. And so I think at the end of the day, my story is yours. Your story is mine. And that is really, for me, kind of a journey, because I grew up very, you know, in a very tight-knit family, but isolated. And, you know, anybody who wasn't in the family was the enemy. And I now feel everybody who's not in my family is in my family. And so the walls that I had up that got crumbled down, I am living in a different way, and I like it much better. And I'm also, you know, I've always been an extrovert, but I'm also a little bit of an introvert. And I'm public, but I'm really tight on my privacy as well. And I think that's a line that a lot of people want to balance, and I could write a book on that too. I won't, but I can. There's a sign that says stop.
I know, so I'm just going to say, I've been watching him put those signs up. So I just quickly want to say, Maria, we love being part of your family.
Thank you,
and
Edie.
thank you for sharing so much.
Thank
and we
you.
have questions from the audience. This is from Kimberly Caskey, your daily mantra.
I don't have a daily mantra. Other
Well, that was
than,
easy.
Yeah, I mean, I just like, thank God that I could open my eyes, right? Thank God.
What would you say to a woman in her late 20s with dreams who may feel that they're distant or out of reach?
And I've talked to a lot of women in their 20s who've come on this book tour asking me almost like that. And I would just say, one step at a time. Put one foot in front of the other. Stay the course. The one thing that I've learned by watching my parents, by watching my uncles, by watching people who change the world, they just put one foot in front of the other. They get knocked down, they pick it up, and they go one foot in front of the other. So I think that, you know, as my mother always said, you can have it all over a lifetime. It's a marathon. Don't think it's a sprint. Don't get discouraged because it's really boring. As she would say to me, it's really unattractive to be discouraged. And so I don't say that to my kids often. I have said it on occasion. But I think, you know, you got to just keep putting one foot in the other and just keep focused, you know, manifesting. I believe in writing down your vision, writing down what you want to do, and just keep focused on that.
It's interesting because it really is the same advice 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s on.
And that's what I think is so interesting now, and I don't think we do enough in bringing generations together. I happen to spend most of my social time with people in their 20s. And the ironic thing is, you know, when you're single, people don't invite you out that much, honestly. They don't. I've started this new thing, date night, where I go on dates with other couples, which has actually been fascinating. I think I might turn it into a book. And, but as somebody said to me, a guy who's a husband of a wife friend of mine, he said, this thing with you with the date night, it's very clever. I said, oh, why? That he goes, you don't pay and you don't put out. This is genius. I was like, yeah, that's good. It's a really good idea. But I think, that I spend most of my time with my kids' friends.
Yeah.
And that I learn so much from them, and they learn a lot from me. They're always like, can I come and talk to you? And I end up like kind of on a permanent, I go sit on the couch. Let's go, And I think that we could do a much better job of that, of being intergenerational and learning a lot, because people in their 20s are as stressed out as people in their 30s, 40s, 50s. And we're all kind of dealing with a changing world and our changing roles in it. And that's what's, to me, is so cool.
Super quickly, tell the story of the pictures of your friends' kids on the wall and how you kept them in line.
Oh, I had this really, I thought, very genius idea. I used to go to the Palm restaurant, when I was growing up. They had one in Washington, and I always liked the caricatures they had on the wall. And so when I moved into my house, I was looking at these empty walls and stuff like that, and I thought, you know what? I'm going to do that. I'm going to put caricatures of myself and the kids on the wall. And then there were so many kids at my house, I thought, I'm going to put all their portraits on the wall, and I'm going to take them down if they misbehave. And I have, I don't know how many people on the wall. And they do all kinds of things for me to get on the wall. And it's genius. I mean, it's mainly a lot of young men, and they bring me all flowers, they bring me candy, they bring me food, and if they even remotely don't stand up when I walk in the room or do something, I'm like, if you do that one more time, you're coming off the wall. They're like, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry. So it's actually turned into be a really big thing about how do people get on the wall. And Lindsay's on the wall, but how do people get on the wall, and and a few people have come off the wall and they're in the drawer. and they have to work their way back to the wall. Or
no
maybe
one wants
not.
to be in the drawer.
Yes.
Looking back at your Sunday papers as you were developing this book and you were going through your columns, was there a particular one that maybe you had forgotten about that gave you pause as you reread?
Well, no, not really. But there's one in there that I really like, which is when I was going through and cleaning up I read that Marie Kondo book, and I'm like, oh my God, I got to go clean out everything in my house. And I was doing that, and I opened this book, because I have so many books, and I opened a book before I was about to throw it out, and I found an inscription in the book from my mother. And it said, to Maria, I can only love you more from heaven. And it made me burst into tears because I knew it to be true. My mother was tough, and she wasn't like other mothers, and only because I think she didn't get that kind of touchy-feely love that was generational or whatever, so she couldn't give that to me. And I felt that she was the nurturing, loving, gentle mother from heaven. And as I've toured around the country, so many people have come up to me and said, I had that kind of a mother. And I believe that to be true. And I think that, I'm not sure I would have written this book had my mother been alive, for a whole host of reasons. I don't think she would have understood the cover. I don't think she might have not understood several chapters in the book. But I have come through a lot of work to understand that, our parents can only give us what they can give us, and how they were raised, and that they all do the best they can. I really believe that. And I was raised by an extraordinary woman, but a tough woman. And I feel very confident in, somebody spoke to me, I won't name them, who here earlier just said that they just lost their mother. And there's not a day go by that I don't miss my mother, that I don't talk to my mother, that I don't reach for my mother. I'll cry, but that I'm fully aware that she loves me more, and she loves me in a different, gentler, softer way from heaven. So that part in the book, that realization in the book, I think is, for me, the most powerful part of the book. It's just a little section, but it's a big section.
You had written that from heaven she can mother you the way
Yeah.
She may have really wanted to.
Yeah, and I believe it wasn't given to her.
Yeah.
And I think at one of the last women's conferences, or right before my mother, it wasn't the last one, before my mother died, I wrote about, I was caring for my mother, and we were arguing over nurses, because every nurse I'd get, she'd fire 24 hours later. And I was like, ugh, exasperated, I'm the only girl. And I was like, oh, I can't do this anymore. And I was like, Mommy, I get these nurses and you fire them. And we were arguing, and I was sitting in the back of the church, and I had this kind of, I don't know, like God moment. And it was like, mother your mother, like you wanted her to mother you. And so the next time my mother said to me, I'm going to fire the nurse. I don't like the nurse you got. I said, I don't like her either. Oh. And wow, you must not like her at all. She goes, I don't like her. I said, I'm so sorry that you don't like her. I'm going to get a new nurse for you. And it must be so hard for you to have a nurse when you've been out in the world doing all these things. She said, it is. And I said, and I'm so sorry. And I'm going to find you the best loving nurse. And she goes, okay, you don't have to fire this one. I'll wait till you get here. And it changed our dynamic when I honored her, and when I then went home, and she wasn't, as I said, a touchy-feely, and I got in bed with her, and usually if I used to touch her, she'd like, don't touch me. And I'd be like, oh, okay. But I got in bed with her, and I told her I loved her, and I grabbed her hand, and I held her hand, and she would normally pull it away, or, she was like that, and she just held my hand, and I talked to her, and I put a blanket on her, and I mothered her, like I think we all want to be mothered. And that doesn't go away no matter your age either. And so I think, we're all the same, right? We all want someone to see us. We all want someone to love us. We all want someone to pick us up when we're down, to call us when we're struggling. And that's really ultimately what this book is about. And as I try to say to my kids, just chill a little. Be a little gentler on yourself. Be a little gentler on other people. And whoa, what you might discover.
It's a very expansive view of motherhood.
Yeah, I think it's...
And I think it ties in with some of the things you talked about from maybe women leadership in the family.
And I think men can do that too. Mm-hmm. I really do believe, I have 4 brothers, and I, grew up with a lot of men, and I think men have great nurturing capabilities, and I think men, truthfully, are in their own crisis today. And I think men are scared, and I think I'm really concerned about our boys as a country, and as a mother of 2 boys, and how trapped so many boys feel in trying to express themselves. And is it okay to be a nurturing man? Is it okay to be kind? Is it okay to be a mothering kind of man? And I think that that's a really important conversation for people to have at their own kitchen tables, and in their own relationships, and in their own mothering and fathering. I think it's important.
Second to last question here. How do you keep your faith? This is from Lisa Ayas.
I struggled with my faith in my 20s. My grandmother had faith that was ridiculous. And I remember talking to her and saying, like, Grandma, how do you have that faith? And she'd like look at me like I was out of my mind. She goes, you just talk to God and you have it. What's wrong with you? And I was like, and she was like that. And I, struggled with my faith. And I think, though, that when life can put you down on your knees, and the phone doesn't ring, and it's scary, your faith can help you out. And I don't have any trouble with my faith now. It's like right there, rock solid, goes with me everywhere, and we're in constant communication.
All right, I saved this comment for last. Will you please run for office? Hashtag vote Maria.
Well, I want to thank you, Edie. I want to thank you so much for being here today.
Well, I would like to end with a prayer.
Why? What?
So all through this, Maria ends all of her columns with a prayer. So I thought it might be nice for us to end with a prayer as well. And for those of you who already have a book on your lap, turn to page 116. And I'm going to ask Maria, do you have, I
I
have
don't
it
have
for
a
you
book.
right here.
I don't have a book. And you won't be able to read, Edie.
That's okay. I love listening to you.
This is, I love this Pope, Pope Francis, and I love the kind of leader, actually, he is on the environment, on social justice issues, on poverty. And he obviously took the name of Francis of Assisi, and I covered his induction, and I went to Assisi, and this poem, this prayer of St. Francis is, I think, a very powerful prayer, and Edie mentioned reading it. So it's the prayer of St. Francis, and it says, Lord, make me an instrument of your peace. Where there is hatred, let us sow love. Where there is injury, pardon. Where there is doubt, faith. Where there is despair, hope. Where there is darkness, light. Where there is sadness, joy. O divine Master, grant that I may not so much seek to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love. For it is in giving that we receive, it is in pardoning that we are pardoned, and it is dying that we are born to eternal life. Amen.
Amen.
Amen. And one of the things that I've learned that's in here that I think is so important, particularly I think for women, because I haven't met a woman in my journalism and my First Lady's work in this who doesn't talk to me about her own critical voice. And I think when I look at this, let me be an instrument of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me sow love. Where there is injury, pardon. I think that begins first and foremost with yourself. And I think we're so often raised and told, forgive that person, go out there and do that, go out there and do this, go out and do that. And I have found in my life when I turned that onto myself, then, as Joan Chittister said, the resurrection began. And when I pardoned myself, when I put faith into my own doubt, when I looked at my own darkness and put light, then it was so much easier to go out and give it to other people. And I think if you read that prayer, regardless of your religion, and think about how you can turn it on yourself, and then all of a sudden it becomes way easier to put it onto somebody else, because if you believe that you deserve to be pardoned or forgiven, so does everybody else. If you believe that you deserve to be loved, then so does everybody else. If you believe that you need to be accepted without judgment, then you got to give it to the other person. And I learned that late in life, and I'm sharing it with you at no matter what age you are. It's a gift. There you go.
Thank you, Maria.
Thank you, Edie. Thank you very much. And thank you very much for having me today. This is over, right?
We're over.